There is a specific kind of loneliness that has nothing to do with being single. You can be in a relationship, you can have friends, you could be surrounded by people every single day and still feel a hunger that nothing seems to fix. Clinicians have a name for it. They call it skin hunger. It is not about sex. It is not about romance. It is about something far more basic, far more ancient, and far more underestimated than either of those things: touch. And once you understand what touch actually does to the human nervous system, you will understand why a hand on your shoulder can sometimes mean more than anything said in words, and why an entire generation is quietly starving for something they don't have a name for. Before humans had language, before humans had fire, before humans had tools, they had touch. Touch is the first sense to develop in the womb. By 8 weeks of gestation, a human embryo already has a functioning sense of touch, before the eyes form, before the ears form, before almost anything else. It is also the last sense to fade. Patients in the final hours of life, long after sight and hearing have diminished, can still respond to touch. It is the sense that opens the human experience and the sense that closes it. Between those 2 points, touch does something that no other sense does as efficiently. It tells the nervous system instantly and unambiguously, you are not alone. This isn't poetry. This is measurable biology. Skin is covered in a specific type of nerve fiber called C-tactile afferents, discovered relatively recently in neuroscience and specialized for exactly one purpose. They do not respond well to fast, sharp touch. They respond best to slow, gentle stroking at a very specific speed, roughly the speed of a hand moving across skin at about 3 centimeters per second. That is almost exactly the speed of a natural caress. These nerve fibers evolved for one reason: to register affectionate touch as a distinct biological signal, separate from the touch that simply tells you whether something is sharp, hot, or rough. Your skin has a dedicated channel whose entire job is detecting that someone cares about you physically. Evolution does not build dedicated neural infrastructure for things that don't matter. When C-tactile afferents are activated by gentle touch, they send signals to a part of the brain called the insular cortex, a region associated with processing emotional and bodily states, not the region associated with basic physical sensation. In other words, affectionate touch is processed by your brain as an emotional event before it is processed as a physical one. This triggers a cascade. Oxytocin is released, the same neurochemical involved in childbirth, breastfeeding, and orgasm. Often called the bonding hormone, though that name undersells what it actually does. Oxytocin reduces activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear and threat detection center. It lowers cortisol, the primary stress hormone. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest state that allows the body to actually heal and recover. Touch does not just feel good, it chemically tells your body it is safe enough to stop being on guard. Researcher Tiffany Field, who has spent decades studying touch deprivation, found that even brief, non-sexual touch, a hand on the arm, a hug lasting 20 seconds, measurably lowers blood pressure, reduces cortisol, and increases white blood cell activity. Compare this to sex. Sex absolutely involves touch, and touch is part of why sex is bonding. But sex is also tangled with performance, expectation, vulnerability, and, for many people, anxiety. Touch alone, without any of that complexity, can trigger many of the same neurochemical benefits, more reliably, more frequently, and with far less psychological overhead. This is why a long hug from someone you trust can sometimes feel more regulating than an entire night with someone you don't fully trust. The mechanism doesn't require romance, it doesn't require arousal. It requires contact, gentleness, and safety. This isn't a uniquely human invention. It's older than humans. Primatologist Harry Harlow's controversial mid-century experiments with rhesus monkeys demonstrated something that changed psychology permanently. Infant monkeys given a choice between a wire mother that dispensed food and a soft cloth mother that provided no food but could be clung to and touched, overwhelmingly chose the cloth mother. Touch, it turned out, was not secondary to survival. For a developing primate brain, touch was closer to a survival requirement in its own right, as critical as nutrition. Among our primate relatives today, grooming consumes an enormous portion of daily social time, far more than would be required for hygiene alone. Grooming maintains social bonds, reduces stress hormones, and reinforces alliances that affect survival and reproductive success. Anthropologists believe early human social bonding likely functioned similarly before the development of complex language. Touch was the original social currency. Long before humans could say, "I trust you," or "you're safe with me," they could communicate exactly that information through contact. Some researchers argue that human language itself evolved partly as an extension of this system, a way to maintain social bonds across larger groups than touch alone could manage. If this is correct, touch isn't just older than sex as a bonding mechanism, it may be older than language itself.